Did you buy AMP this week? In full transparency, I did as a result of writing the script for this video. To be frank, that's become part of the hazard of this little side hustle of mine. I research a script, then all of a sudden I'm entering a buy order. That's why there's a warning sign. This video might inspire you to buy AMP. That is not my intent. That being said, are you an AMP holder and just popping in to find out if anything interesting is going on? What if we start with a 3.5 million buy order of AMP tokens? By whom? Flexa Network. The exact buy order will be 3,500,258.07. Ready? Let's dive in. Welcome to Unusual Due Diligence. In this fresh episode, we take a returning look at the AMP token, which is used by Flexa Network. If you've seen my prior videos on the AMP token, then you'll know the many reasons why a bullish lens is pretty possible. If you're new to AMP, let me get you excited by it. The promise of AMP is to offer safe, secure, and instant transfers of crypto assets. And there is a well-connected and well-funded company known as Flexa Network operating behind the scenes. The promise of AMP is to offer safe, secure, and instant transfer of crypto assets. And there is a well-connected and well-funded company known as Flexa Network operating behind the scene. Even better, AMP and Flexa Network are already wed into gas stations, Shopify, and more. There's a strange bullish force built into the AMP token I have not covered in prior videos, and that's what I'm going to get into today. Specifically, there are forces in the market that are highly supportive of the upward direction for AMP, and right now you might be seeing more macro conditions that can convince you otherwise. Let me share with you a surprise for me perhaps. It just never occurred to me that Flexa Network would go about the process of buying AMP token as a gesture of good faith to help cure people that accidentally sent their AMP token to what's best described as the sock drawer. You know that place you lose your socks? Well, people are losing AMP token. However, it just never dawned on me that a company would voluntarily offer to do a whale buy of AMP token to help make whole these accidents. And I'm sure there's some guidelines inside Flexa Network for when this can or should apply. So just to frame this carefully, Flexa Network is using their own US fiat to intentionally buy up AMP tokens in order to ensure the success of their platform. Let me repeat that again. Flexa Network is using their money to intentionally buy up more AMP tokens to ensure the success of their platform. Aside from Anchor, this is a kind of rare behavior in a company that really makes you appreciate the future of Flexa Network and AMP holding. First, let's go back and ask this question. Why is Flexa buying AMP tokens? What is actually happening and why? To answer that question, we need to cover this post by Tyler on the official AMP forum. Quote, since inception, a total of 1.216871.43 FXC, the predecessor to AMP, and 2.2 million AMP have been erroneously set to the AMP token contract at 0 by F, ending in 2, and the FlexiCoin contract 0 by 4, ending in E. This is a result of the FXC AMP token migration and staking attempts on the Flexa network. All of those tokens are permanently unrecoverable. The admin keys to the FlexiCoin contract were burned 10 to a useless single-use 10 address in November of 2020, and the AMP contract does not have admin functionality to interact with these assets. This proposal is for community vote on whether a one-time AMP replacement for the unrecoverable assets should be offered. If offered, Flexa would purchase 3.5 million AMP on the open market and allow affected addresses to claim new tokens. This one-time contract by Flexa is intended to support the early adopters and users of the network. In order to ensure that tokens are sent to active addresses, users will need to prove ownership of their effective address via a gasless signature. The AMP team has verified a list of the 35 eligible addresses that have erroneously sent AMP FXC. Please note, this proposal and the use of funds is unrelated to the AMP community grant program passed in the previous proposal. Flexa will voluntarily buy AMP from the open market using its own funds. AMP will not be issued from any treasury or development fund. Did you catch that 2.2 million AMP were sent to an address in which the AMP contract provides no backdoor by way of administrative controls to recover those tokens? So Flexa could have chosen to simply ignore the plight of the people impacted by this. Instead, Flexa is going to spend over 100,000 USD in order to make a good number, 35 total, of the early adopters whole. That is a highly unusual act. Let me take a sidebar, speaking of unusual. Here at Unusual Due Diligence, we recently celebrated over 100 members of the Unusual Due Diligence community. You can find that video on the community playlist under the channel. Link to that will be below. What's so impressive to me about this is that unlike other channels, I'm not pumping these videos on social networks, nor am I advertising anything specifically, nor am I doing anything with SEO. If you watch from the beginning, you've seen that I'm still very much learning all the things, as they say. What's impressive to me is you, that there are real people out there that are interested in the deep value and the unusual side of their current or future investments. So, hey, thanks for being here. Okay, now this video is about the AMP token and Flexa Network. If you follow this channel, you know this is part of the video where I'm going to take us even deeper. So let's go in further. The post about the community announcement is written by a profile handle labeled Tyler. And the nice thing about forum software is that you can follow the rabbit hole and start piecing together a bigger picture. For example, let's ask this question. Were the 35 people just members of Flexa, members of the core team, or employees of the company? That's a pretty fair thing to ask here. After all, you could have a cynical view on this entire outcome. However, this post by Tyler says the following. This is a great question, and to fully support transparency, to the very best of my knowledge, none of the tokens sent to FlexaCoin or AMP contracts were related to any of the core team or affiliates, etc. Now, let's say you've already on board with all this, but you're a Kraken or Coinbase user, and what you really want to know is whether AMP will be stakeable at some point in your favorite crypto mobile app. Well, that's where you learn this nugget. Staking AMP directly from exchanges or custodial services actively in progress. In fact, one of the core features of the AMP token, partition strategies, was designed almost exclusively for this purpose. We're very motivated to enable AMP staking in the most safe, secure, and accessible ways possible. I personally am very excited about that. So who is this Tyler person anyways? And why should we even believe them? Well, if you do a quick Google, you learn the name is Tyler Spalding, co-founder of Flexa Network, based out of New York City. He also recently, back in August of 2021, did a talk at Chainlink, which will be available in this video below. In that talk, Tyler talks about the decentralization push and how it should be asterisked. There are some market forces at play that do push towards centralization. It's not a one-size-fits-all solution, right? What I mean is this, the market is a complicated animal. And Tyler uses the example of BitTorrent versus Netflix to show the market case. Netflix is a centralized solution and BitTorrent decentralized. AMP, well, it works for both cases. But let's look at the power of the decentralized case. First, the AMP collateral is locked against the fiat value of the purchase, meaning we have to allocate enough AMP tokens to cover the fiat value of the underlying. The collateral gets released when the transaction reaches economic finality on chain, meaning that, yes, this in a decentralized network, that transaction has cleared. AMP is allowing the slow-moving decentralized network to behave as if it were a fully centralized network. Imagine having a viable Netflix in a decentralized format. What else does this mean? It means that AMP solves a very real problem. If you have a wide decentralized network that moves slowly, you somehow need a magic bean that makes transactions safe, secure, and instantaneous. And that's exactly where AMP comes in. There's a lot more here than we have time to go into, so you might see coverage on Tyler's talk in the future. In this episode, we covered why Flexa is buying several million AMP tokens, how some random guy on an internet forum was no less than the co-founder of Flexa Network, intent on doing the right thing by the early adopters of the AMP token. What a wild ride, but we're just getting started. A company invested in the success of its token by making sure the early adopters making that network are successful because of an whoopsie along the way. Well, it's those real human relationships that are going to define the future of financial value. And that, my friends, is why AMP was doing quite well in time. Make waves, my friend.